The former Vice President Biden is in the race. You see the polls, although I don't know what they matter at this point. Where do you feel you are? How do you feel you're positioned at this point? And where do you have to go?
So literally, I feel great in where I am right now. I'm in Fort Worth, where we got to be part of something, as you know, that's absolutely historic. It had been, I believe, more than 24 years since a Democrat had carried Tarrant County statewide, working with extraordinary volunteers, our ambassador program, and just people who gave us a chance. We helped to not just put Tarrant County in play, but really Texas in play, all 38 of its electoral college votes. So I feel really good about that.
Just this weekend in Texas, you have yourself here, Mayor Pete, Kirsten Gillibrand, Julian Castro, and more are on the way. So how do you win Texas and get the lion's share of the 262 delegates at stake?
I love that they're all here, and they're here because Texas counts. And the people of Texas put this state in play in 2018 for 2020. But I do think, Gromer, that at a time that the entire nation's focus is trained on the U.S.-Mexico border, as the only person who lives there, raising their family there, represented that community, I can tell a very powerful, positive story about immigration, about our connection to the rest of the world, about the ability not to fear one another and not just to tolerate our differences, but to embrace them, and in that embrace, to see a much stronger United States. I can talk about what it's like to campaign in 254 counties and not write anybody off or take anybody for granted. And I can talk about being part of a movement led by people. No PACs, no corporations, no special interests, just the people of Texas making something extraordinary happen. That to me is exciting. That's why I'm in this race. And I know that we can meet the challenges of climate, of healthcare, of an economy that does not work well enough for far too many, and of a system of immigration that's got millions of our fellow Texans living in the shadow, the fear of deportation, when we could really call them to contribute their best to this country's future.
Given the economic news today, unemployment rate the lowest since 1969.
Right.
How difficult will Donald Trump be to beat in 2020? Given that for some people the economy is doing quite well.
And for some people the economy is doing well. Helped even more by tax breaks that totaled about $2 trillion passed by this administration, that flowed disproportionately to the richest Americans, to corporations at a time of historic income and wealth inequality, at a time that corporations are already sitting on record piles of cash. What I hear as I listen to people in these town halls all across the country is too many are working too many jobs. We know in Texas, of course, our school teachers and public school educators, roughly half of them are working a second or a third job. Unfortunately, that's not unique to Texas. We're seeing people all over this country just to get by, having to work 2 and 3 jobs. We are the hardest working people on the planet. And I think that's something we should be proud of, but no one should have to work more than one job to sustain themselves, feed their family, keep a roof over their head, and pay for medication and therapy for their kids if they need it. And that's what we're requiring people to do now. So I think when we connect the stories of those that we're meeting who are asking for a minimum wage that allows them to live with dignity, $15 an hour, universal health care for everybody without question as a condition to living here in the United States of America.
The former vice president has a big lead in the polls. What makes you a better choice than Joe Biden? I mean, how do you overcome that?
Yeah. Ultimately, voters are going to decide the answer to that question. The good news is that we have almost 10 months before the first caucuses in Iowa, the first primary in New Hampshire, before the first ballots are cast in South Carolina, or people come together in Nevada. And then Super Tuesday, weeks beyond that in California, in Texas. We have a lot of time to talk to and listen to and reflect the stories of a lot of people. So I feel really good about where we are, really good about a strategy that is focused not on corporations or special interests or folks in Washington, D.C. who are trying to call this race more than a year and a half before it'll be decided by voters. This is a campaign about people.
Republicans say people don't care about the Mueller investigation. that it's a closed deal. When they go to their districts or where the people they represent, that's not what they're hearing. What about you, and how do you feel about the Mueller investigation and what should happen next?
You know, top of mind for most people, as I've listened to them across this country, is the ability to afford prescription medication, the quality of their child's school, their retirement savings, their pension that may now be unfunded, the job that may be automated out of existence, and the need to skill up for the next one. And so we're talking about those issues and we're responding to that. But also underneath all of that is an understanding by all of us that 243 years into this experiment, where we get to freely choose our elected representatives and our leaders, there's nothing that guarantees us another 243. There's nothing that even guarantees us another day unless we stand up and fight for it. And to have a president who welcomed the participation of a foreign power into our election, that sought to sway that election in his favor, a president who clearly obstructed justice in firing the principal investigator and calling upon his attorney general to shut the investigation down, in lying and dissembling and creating such a climate of fear within the White House and government that he almost got away with it. Thanks to Bob Mueller, his team of investigators, the American people, and our system of justice, we're finally learning the truth about this president. And yes, there has to be consequences. Yes, there has to be accountability. Yes, I think there's enough evidence now for the House of Representatives to move forward with impeachment.